Mixed martial arts. Mixed martial arts. How do we like our martial arts? In Jersey, baby! Yeah!
Yes! I don't know if anybody's more excited for this card than our own E. Casey Lied. And yes, the UFC out of the world's most famous Apex on the road in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Big fight at the top of the bill, Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot, which is expected to be a number one contender fight. Vicente Luque in the co-main event, fighting Joaquin Buckley. And then there's other fights that are happening that we're going to discuss here on the live UFC Atlantic City preview show here on MMAfighting.com. Thank you for joining us. I am Mike Heck. What an ensemble cast we have today. First, my bald brother, the wise wordsmith, deputy editor at MMAfighting.com, Mr. Shaun Al-Shatti. Shaun, how we doing today on this Friday?
I'm doing wonderful, Mike. It's always a good morning when I can be with all y'all. Bald Brotherhood is growing. Connor Burke's joining the club now. Everybody's doing it. Come join the cool club. Shave your head. Casey, you're next.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if he could pull that off. Actually, he could. I think he could pull it off. But someone who is not part of the Bald Brother team, at least not right now, social media guru from MMAfighting.com. Always a pleasure and a delight to have New York Rick joining us on the show. Hello, New York Rick. And you're going to be there tomorrow, are you not?
I am. I'm planning on driving out tomorrow afternoon. Going to enjoy the card. And yes, hopefully I'm a ways away from joining the Bald Brotherhood, but I salute all of my bald brothers out there, including new member GC. Shout out to all the bald guys.
Yes. Shout out to GC. The watch party is going to be fun. Two bald guys watching fights together. UFC
like
300.
Dana and Rogan, all over again. The new dynamic duo of baldness.
I can't wait for Sage Steele to ask me what Connor Burks' dream is down the line, maybe 5-10 years from now, but that's down 5 to 10 years from now. Shaun, let's talk about UFC.
Can we just, on its face, like, that is such a terrible question, right? Like, I feel like that's been lost in this whole conversation of all of this whole ridiculous whatever gaffe that she made. But, like, what are you expecting Dana White to tell you right there? Like, that is just such a terrible, terrible interview question. That is such a I don't know. It blew me away watching that. Like, what do you want from the guy? What do you expect for him to say?
I have to confess, I have not seen the full interview. I've only seen that clip circulating, so I don't know what other specific questions got asked in the midst of that interview. Maybe they were intended for Joe Rogan. I actually don't know at this moment what kind of transpired before that. But certainly, if that was like the level of questioning, rough shape. Because that, as you've pointed out, that's a terrible question. Now, if it was like there was a bunch of real specific stuff and then we ended with just that capper, I guess I'd kind of be okay with it. But yeah, not high level stuff going on over there. And then especially if you don't get the person right, I mean, not good.
Dana, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food?
Yeah.
You like pizza? Cold pizza, hot pizza? What do you like? Like, come on, what are we doing here?
Ariel doesn't like cold pizza, as we discovered.
I'm not even I don't even want to get into that right now.
That was the most insane take. That was the most insane take of 2024. Cold pizza is like almost as good as hot pizza. Like, cold pizza is the best cold leftover food in the world.
It's the number one leftover, and he had it dead last. So yeah, shout out to Ariel.
Yeah, shout out to Ariel. Pizza and Thanksgiving leftovers are two of the worst. Get out of here. We love you, Ariel, but the takes when it comes to outside of the MMA space, just not great. But Shaun, let's talk about UFC Atlantic City. There are different ways we can grade this. You and Jed have put together the fart system. Jed gave this a 4.5. Just because Jed gave it a 4.5 doesn't mean it's etched in stone. People can grade it however they see fit. How do you grade this UFC Atlantic City card? We're out of the Apex. Some people have different takes on it. I don't think it's going to be a bad watch, but outside of like a couple of fights, there's not a ton of stakes here. So where are we at here? What's the scale? What's the grade for UFC Atlantic City?
Yeah, of course. The infamous, now famous fart system fights above replacement tussles. Jed gave it 4.5. To me, that doesn't feel generous enough, right? Like, you look at this card, it's not bad. Like, especially, it gets an instant bump up that we're not at the Apex, that this is not going to be a soulless environment, that we're going to have people cheering for it, that there's going to be, a flow to it. There's going to be a crowd. It's just that it just instantly makes it better. Also, I mean, Eric's going to be there. Like, come on, that you bump it up there just for that. You get that level of him in the room. Like, what can you do? 4.5 seems low. I feel like it's around 5.5. To me, the top 3 fights, all of those deserve to be scored on the Fart system. And then you throw in, like, you look at Nate Landwehr. He's always good for, or down for a good time. Luque versus Virna, that's a good fight in and of itself. I'd say 5, but you could probably talk me to 5.5 if you want to throw a Chidi or a Billy Algeo or even an Andre Petrosky in there. I'd let settle around a 5.5, which is good. That, to me, that's an above average fight night. Like, this is one that I'm looking forward to. I think there are heavy stakes in the main event. The co-main event looks like an absolute banger. Chris Weidman, it's always interesting when he fights. Bruno Silva, in addition, is just a very fun fighter. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I mean, this might be the last time we ever see Chris Weidman fight in general, a UFC Hall of Famer. And also, again, anytime you get Nate the Train, the possibility of a Nate the Train interview on the mic and just whatever that guy's going to do, the way he throws down, I'm super here for it. So I don't know. I like this card. I'm up for this card. I'm excited for this card.
How do you grade it, New York, Rick? You don't have to go with the Fart system, but you could give it just a regular letter grade or a number grade, however you see fit. Top to bottom, what are we grading this one?
Yeah, a lot of my world is kind of black or white binary options, so maybe thumbs up instead of thumbs down. I will confess, they've broken me. The UFC has broken me, and I have gotten so used to dog shit Apex cards and so starved for actual decent MMA fights that even this is enough to get me pretty damn excited, because there's at least like 5 names that I know on this card. And so, yeah, I've been conditioned. They've successfully broken me and conditioned me to the point that even the most meager of fight night cards is somewhat exciting to me now, because of how much sludge I've had to kind of trudge through every single week. And so I'm in. Like, this card's good compared to the trash we've kind of been seeing. There's quite a few fights in here with some stakes, and there's names and faces and stories that I recognize and can get invested in. So I dig it, and I'm going to be there, which will be fun, not working for the first time in quite a bit, just enjoying the show. So yeah, I'm in on Atlantic City. I'm in on this card, and I'm quite excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're grading on a curve with all of these, you know?
Well, that was the most 2024 analysis of like a UFC fight night. You're essentially, you've been Clockwork Orange. You've been strapped down to this seat with your eyeballs just strapped open, watching these Apex events over and over until you've just accepted that this is your lot in life, and you've moved forward with it. I appreciate that.
I feel like that was their plan, and it has been successful. I imagine I'm not the only one. I think they have perfectly done it and conditioned me to get excited more for this one. So kudos to them. They've done it, and it worked. But yeah, this one's decent. I'm gonna enjoy.
Yeah, it's a C plus B minus. It's like a 79.5, and then we round up because the teacher is generous to give it that B minus. We're giving you the half grade bump, rounding it up. That's kind of where I'm at with this one. This card is what essentially every Apex card should look like if a fight or two fell out. This is what they all should look like. In terms of the road shows, comparing it to like UFC Austin and some of the other cards that have been on the road, kind of to round out 2023, this is tough compared to the rest of those. However, I do think, because of some of the names Shaheen mentioned, some of the matchups here, I think if your plan for tomorrow is, you know what, I don't feel like going out, I just want to sit on the couch, eat some food, and watch some fights, I think you could have a good time here. I think there's a propensity for violence here. I think there's a lot of potential for some big finishes and some fun scraps. So if that's all you care about, I think you're going to enjoy this card. There are some gamers. There are some freaking dogs on this card. There are some stakes here. I don't think it's going to be a bad watch, but in terms of like my scale of what are the chances we talk about this card on Tuesday? Not high. Not high. Maybe some things happen. Chris Weidman ends up like retiring or gets a huge win. I think he might be like one of the big stories coming out of the card, but we'll see how it all plays out, because we do have this main event, Shaun. We have Erin Blanchfield, who a lot of people felt has already earned herself a title shot, fighting Manon Fiorot, who there are other people who feel like she has already earned herself a title shot, but we have a bit of a logjam in the championship picture right now because Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko had a great fight in September, but there was no winner. It went to a draw. Now these two ladies are going to coach the Ultimate Fighter. They're going to fight again later on this year. Could even be as late as September at this point, but nothing has actually been officially announced here. And you would think the winner of this Erin Blanchfield Manon Fiorot fight is going to fight the winner, but it's going to be quite some time until they actually get their opportunity to compete for the title. So your thoughts on this matchup? We're a day away from it. Erin Blanchfield, Manon Fiorot, high stakes here at 125 pounds.
First of all, I mean, on its face, I like this fight a lot, right? Like, it should be meaningful. When I said at the top, like, there are high stakes in the main event, I feel like that's maybe an idealistic way to look at this. But, like, on its head, like, it should be a very meaningful fight. You have two of the top three women in this, or two of the top four, I guess I should say, women in this division going at it. And the winner ostensibly should be that next person in line. It's just kind of odd, and I would say almost ironic how the women's flyweight division is now mirroring what the men's flyweight division was for basically 3 years, right? Where we had this Brandon Moreno, Divas Figueiredo thing that just kept going back and forth. And it was a fun time for everybody. Like, all of those fights were spectacular in one way or another. But it did clog up the division for everybody for a good chunk of time. And in particular, the man who is now champion, Alexander Pantoja. Like, he was just on the sidelines having to twiddle his fingers and wait for all of this to get resolved, for these dudes to fight 4 times to eventually get his shot. And that's now where we're at with the women's side, right? Because I feel like you look back at January where we did a champions prediction poll, or like story, more or less, podcast for everyone on MMA fighting, and just look at the women's strawweight picks or flyweight picks. Overwhelmingly, Erin Blanchfield took it. Like, she is sort of the queen in waiting, right? She is the next person up. She is the, however you want to throw it, the Shavkat of this division. She is the person that we are waiting for to get that opportunity, because it feels like she's the best, but she just hasn't gotten the chance. And now with the way that this has played out, and we have the Ultimate Fighter filming right now, as you said, Mike, like, that show probably debuting in June, going to run for a couple months, and then ostensibly we'll have the fight in maybe the 3rd or 4th quarter of the year, and that might just be it. Like, we just might not get another shot at this title for the rest of 2024. So you're looking at late 2024, or probably early 2025 for the next shot. That's tough. That's a really tough situation for a person like Erin Blanchfield. Luckily, though, she is 24, right? And she sort of seems to be approaching this with the proper, I wouldn't say the proper mindset, but like a good mindset, where she's not bemoaning the situation. She's not complaining. She's just saying, okay, like, I'm this is what it is. I'm going to take this opportunity. And, if I end up having to sit for a long time, I'll probably take another opportunity. I'll just keep fighting. I respect that a lot. I very much do feel like Erin Blanchfield is the best fighter in this division, and we are just waiting for it. But, it is a tough situation. And on the other side, you have Manon Fiorot, who is in a complete opposite situation, right? She is not 24. She is 34. She is like, this is it. If she is going to become a UFC champion, this is the run where it's going to have to happen. So there's a lot at stake, and then almost nothing at stake. And it's a very strange situation like that. It's almost like when we saw Belal Muhammad fight, all the fights that he had, and then end with the Gilbert Burns situation. And then it's just like, oh, well, this guarantees you a title shot, but you got to wait for the next year. Like, that kind of falls with a thud in that situation. Because I think if Manon does win, if I'm Manon Fiorot, I'm not taking another fight after this. Like, you got your opportunity at that point. You got to sit on it and wait. It's a very strange division, very strange setup. And also you have the looming threat of, like, what if Valentina Shevchenko wins? Do they run this back a 4th time? So that then it gets pushed back even more. So there's just so many outside circumstances that sort of cloud this fight in a way that maybe is frustrating and not what ideal. But that being said, I just on its merits, I love this fight. I think it's going to be a really interesting fight to see sort of plot forward how we view this flyweight division and the contenders within it over the next year.
It's really interesting how it's high stakes, but almost no stakes. I like the way you sort of phrase that, because it does kind of feel like that. And New York, Greg, I'll throw this sort of the same question to you. Erin Blanchfield being 24, if she loses this fight, yeah, it sucks and it's a step back, but she's obviously got plenty of time to get back. Manon being 34, and it seems like she's had to scratch and claw a little bit more. She did get the Rose fight. And in most divisions, you fight a former champion, somebody with the star power, the casual appeal of a Rose Namajunas, that just gets you right to a title fight. Now she has to go fight Erin. I kind of feel like she has to win this fight, or that door pretty much closes on her unless something super weird happens, because you just have a lot more contenders coming. This is a very deep division. The Natty Ices of the world are on their way up. So how do you view this matchup from a stakes perspective, and what do you just think about it in general?
Yeah, I think Shaheen laid it out super nicely. The idea that it has a lot of stakes and nearly no stakes at all just because of the timeline. But that's the reality of the UFC as it exists now in 2024. That timing is everything, right? Title shots are almost, if not equal part, measured or determined by timing, at least a significant degree. You can ascertain to what the next title contender will be based on timing and not just merit. Whereas there was previously a system where it kind of existed only that way. And so, I think the winner of this fight certainly, I think, has the opportunity to sit out and wait for a title shot. But I would imagine that because of how long this takes to resolve, that no matter who it is, they will probably fight again because they have a short career and because they need to maximize their earning potential in this window. And because if they don't take opportunities as they're given, they could be sitting for a long time. Because even if you are saying I'm the number one contender and the UFC determines you're the number one contender, one, that could change tomorrow. There could be a new number one contender and they could just decide that you're no longer the number one contender. Or two, it could take longer to resolve the business between Valentina Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso than you imagined. And all of a sudden now your timeline's pushed even further. And so they're in a precarious spot. I imagine that they'll feel confident that they have earned the next title shot. But I do think once that clock starts ticking, we may see somebody end up fighting again. We heard Erin Blanchfield with Ariel in her latest interview on the MMA Hour say she wants to stay busy. Like, I don't think there's any secret that she wouldn't want to wait, that she would be open to opportunities if she's able to win here, or even not, obviously, but not wait for that business to be resolved and get back in there. So as far as the idea of Manon Fiorot, like, kind of being older, I certainly can recognize that, especially in comparison to Blanchfield, but she doesn't have a lot of MMA miles on her. So I don't know how difficult the path is back to a 125-pound title shot. I think you can kind of get there under most normal circumstances in a few fights. Unfortunately, the circumstance has not been ideal, right? Where it has been a long, drawn-out kind of saga with Grasso and Shevchenko. But in most circumstances, I don't know how far away she'd be even after a loss to what would then be the number one contender in Erin Blanchfield. I think she could get back in 2 or 3. So I don't think this is a must win by any means. I think she's still young enough in her UFC career and even her MMA career that she's not going to drop too far. She's not going to drop too far. The resume is pretty solid to this point. A win, as you pointed out, a win over Rose Namajunas matters. And I think she'd get a high level fight on the back of it. So I don't think this is a must win for her. Certainly, I think it will put her in best position. And definitely not a must win for Blanchfield, as you said. Like, we expect her to be somebody who's hanging around the UFC and hanging around this division for another decade or so. So yeah, definitely less pressure on her for that regard. But I don't think either is in a must win. I would definitely not point to it that way.
I hosted Heck of a Morning on Twitter this morning. The amount of questions, Shaun, that I got about Manon Fiorot on the scale, it was almost like every third question was about it. She was the first one on the scale. She made weight, and most people thought she looked pretty rough up there. And Blanchfield strolls in there, championship weight, ready to go. Does this change anything for you? Because when I was asked about this, I don't think it changes much. I think this fight really goes one of two ways. Either Erin Blanchfield gets her to the ground and does what Erin Blanchfield does, or Manon has incredible takedown defense and keeps this thing at range and kind of just pieces Erin up on the feet. So were you concerned when you saw the video, and does this change the way you view this fight, seeing her on the scale?
I think those are almost two different questions, right? Because am I concerned? I mean, I think anytime you see someone struggling in a weigh-in situation, like there's a little bit of concern there, obviously, just inherently, because that is just, that's not what you want to see before a fight. That's such an unhealthy situation already. And then you compile it with sort of what we're looking at. Like, obviously there's a little bit of concern, But in terms of does it change the complexion of the matchup to me and sort of how I view it, I wouldn't say that. Like you spelled it out exactly, Mike. Like this feels to me like Manon Fiorot is already fighting an uphill battle, right? Like I think a lot of us expect Erin Blanchfield to win. I think Manon winning would be a surprise for a lot of people. It would certainly be an upset in my eyes. And you just laid out the pass, right? Like Erin Blanchfield has to go in there and be Erin Blanchfield, and she will, in my opinion, likely win. Manon Fiorot has to have the best performance of her UFC career to go in there and upset a person who I keep throwing the Shavkat comparison out there just because it feels as though Erin Blanchfield has that inevitability to her. She has that a little bit of that aura of, well, she's 24. She's going to be around the UFC for another 10 years, as Eric said. She's going to hold a championship at some point in that 10 years. It's just a matter of when, not if. So I don't know that what we saw this morning changes the complexion of the fight to me. Maybe a little concerning, but ultimately I think this is still going to go the way it's going to go, and Manon's going to have to have the best fight of her life to be able to pull this off.
Rick, do you agree with that? Do you kind of feel like it's basically that simple when you look at this fight, or do you have other questions about it?
Well, just to quickly touch on the weight cut thing, like it's certainly something to note. It's certainly not something to ignore, but ultimately we've seen both ends of the spectrum, right? We've seen people look absolutely dead on the scale and come in and have amazing performances. And we've seen people look great on the scale and come in and lay a dud. So unfortunately, there's no way to really certainly you have to pay attention to it. Certainly you have to consider that and think about that. But ultimately we've seen so varied the results on the back of a tough looking weight cut. We don't ultimately know enough. We don't know in camp what has kind of transpired. Maybe there's a reason for the weight cut being particularly difficult. Maybe it's just the extra pounds didn't come off, but after proper hydration, she's going to be great. It's one of those things, like we certainly need to note and pay attention to it, but ultimately it's so difficult to kind of spin forward what that ultimately means for the fight. As far as the matchup itself and the kind of stylistic breakdown, I don't know if she has to have her best performance ever, because I think there's a path to victory where she's just a superior striker and can frustrate Erin Blanchfield. I think there's a path to victory where she's just able to stay on the outside and really just point fight her way to a decision if Blanchfield isn't able to potentially crowd her and grapple her and make it uncomfortable for her. So I don't know that it's her. I don't know that it's Blanchfield's fight to lose. I really look at this matchup quite decently for both sides. I see paths to victory for each fighter. And so I'm intrigued by it. I like this matchup quite a bit. And I think it would be by far the best. I don't know if it's fair to say it's the best striker she'll face, because certainly I want to, give respect to Rose Namajunas and this will be a very, very tough matchup for both. How about that? That's how I'll say it. Like, Blanchfield is, I think, going to face her toughest striker, and in Manon, she's facing somebody who's super well-rounded and can be aggressive at times and really knows how to finish fights. And somebody that I think stylistically is dissimilar from everybody she's seen before. But I do think Erin Blanchfield's hands have come a long way, and I'm interested to see how that plays out. But I feel like they could pose problems for each other. I don't necessarily see it as like a situation where it's Blanchfield's fight to lose. So I'm intrigued by that matchup. I quite like this matchup, actually.
I think my biggest question to you guys.
Sure. I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to cut you off, but just quickly, because I've been thinking about this. It feels as though there is so much opportunity for women in this flyweight division who, again, we've sort of laid out the scenario, right? That this division is going to be on hold for a while, in particular if Valentina wins, because then you have a chance of a fourth fight. And then we're just pushing this out to basically like this time next year. We still probably don't have resolution. It feels like there's such opportunity for women who are maybe not quite on that like next person up, but it's still on the precipice to make a move to 135 and advance very quickly. Because 135 right now, we've talked about it ad nauseum on so many different shows, but it's such a complete wasteland, right? Like the specter of Kayla Harrison is certainly helpful and welcoming, but also, hey, Kayla Harrison needs to make the weight. And I hold great reservations about whether she's able to do that healthily, consistently, over and over and over again. Nonetheless, one time for UFC 300. Is it almost a better like that's a dumb question that I'm asking myself. It's not better if Manon Fiorot loses, but is there a way to spin it if Manon Fiorot loses that, hey, this isn't going to happen for you now, probably for the next couple of years at flyweight, but go on up, man. Like if this weight is difficult for you, Manon Fiorot goes up to 135. She's instantly like a top 3 fighter at 135. And that opportunity is right there. Like Manon Fiorot versus whoever holds that title, whether it's Juliana Pena, Kayla Harrison, Raquel Pennington, whoever you want to throw out there. Like that's a decently big fight. Like that's not a big fight, obviously, because I think there's not really that many big fights at 135, but that is a better option for the UFC, certainly, than other opportunities that would be available at 135 in terms of matchmaking. Like I could see a very clear path for her there. So I wonder if there's almost like, when we spin this as, oh, this is must win for her because she's 34, things like that, it feels like there's a very clear pivot that she could take advantage of just because of the weird stages of both of these divisions. Am I off, or is there something to that?
Rick?
I personally think that's a viable path for anybody at 125. I think 135 is so thin that it's not just her. Like if you're a 125er and you're feeling like this line is getting crowded, there's fights, and it doesn't have to be a career change, right? You don't necessarily have to become a 135er. You can be a 125er who's taking 135-pound fights, and we've seen, fighters do this. If you're Macy Barber and it's seeming like business is really not picking up in the flyweight division and not potentially getting fights you want, you keep calling that Juliana Pena fight out, and maybe you get that, and then you come back to 25. Or now you've established yourself at a contender at 35. So I think that option should be on the table for more than just her. I think everybody at 125 should be thinking about that, depending on how this title fight at 125 plays out and then the next contendership. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think more fighters should be thinking about this beyond her.
Yeah. Even if Erin wins, she could think about that. Like
Yes.
if she wants to stay busy,
Agreed.
she could just be like, I'll go up if she wants to. And I would pick her. I think she would be very competitive with most of the women in that division. So especially if like Juliana wins
beats everyone in that division.
Yeah. If Juliana wins the belt or something, or if Kayla Harrison loses at UFC 300 to Holly Holm, if Erin Blanchfield wins tomorrow, she could just be like, F it, I'm going. I'll just go and try to get that title shot. Like, just stay ready. I would definitely assume she'll stay ready. If that call comes, she could just bounce right in and do it. It's still a title fight. That'd be crazy, but doable. So, yeah, I completely agree with Rick, and that would be super, super interesting. But,
yeah, it just feels like there's such a clear pivot. Because, like, even you look at Raquel Pennington, like, she is the same size as Manon Fiorot for the most part. Like, they are pretty equivalent body sizes. So it's just, I don't know. If I was a manager of a 125er right now, like, I am telling my fighter, like, hey, I know this isn't maybe the path you thought out, but, like, this is here. And this is probably the opportunity that like, just because of the window and the where these divisions are, like, this opportunity is not going to be here forever. Like, why not just take this detour? Why not just take this side mission and then come back with more cachet as a champion or a former champion or something like that? It's just something.
Yeah,
to throw out there.
I like the thought. I would add the one thing that, like, it's very easy for us to sit here and be like, gain 10 pounds, when in reality, like, we're talking about percentages of body weight, and there's going to be some girls at 135 that are just bigger, and it's going to be hard to overcome. But I think the benefit that a lot of these 125ers have is there's a big skill gap. Like the flyweight division right now has a lot of skilled fighters, and the 135-pound division does not. There are bodies there are bigger girls, but the skill difference is significant. I think the 125ers are significantly more skilled, and that can really account for that size difference, that they'd probably have some decent success moving up. But they might run into some girls that it's just, they're too big. They're unfortunately too big, and they can't overcome that skill. That skill gap is not going to be the determining factor, but I think it's worth a shot potentially, especially if it looks like 125 is going to be on ice for quite a bit. The title, at least.
And in particular, I think Kayla is the biggest example of what you just said of running to the bigger girls, right? Like if Kayla can't actually make this weight, if she can do this and she can cut it down consistently and make this weight twice a year or 3 times a year, then yeah, this is a very, very different conversation, because that is someone who, like you just said, does have the skill to match the size. But it's just a weird situation with these two divisions right now. It feels like there's opportunity, in particular for a person like Manon, who is 34 and bigger.
She has a big frame. She has a very big frame. She could potentially do that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we'll see who could take that next step. Let's take a look at the betting lines, courtesy of our friends at DraftKings, and make our picks. Erin Blanchfield, Manon on the scale has at least taken some of the betting community to side even more with Erin Blanchfield. She went from a minus 180 to a minus 192 in a matter of hours. The comeback on Manon Fiorot plus 160. Shaun, we'll start with you. Who ends the night with their hand raised, Erin Blanchfield or Manon Fiorot?
I mean, I feel like you can tell where I'm leaning on this, just the way I've talked about it. I am picking Erin Blanchfield. I feel like she is the Shavkat of this division. She is the future. She is going to hold that title at some point whenever the rest of the Grasso Shevchenko stuff gets resolved. I'll take a 4th round finish submission. I do think this is going to be a more competitive fight than I've maybe laid it out over the past 10, 20 minutes. As Eric laid out perfectly, like the Manon is very, very good at what she does. She is a very efficient and effective striker for this division. She's very skilled just with her ring craft and the way she works around the cage. But ultimately, I think Erin's just going to be too much. The pressure, she's just going to be overwhelming, and she'll wear her down and get that 4th round finish, as I said.
What say you, New York Rick? Where's the pick lie? Where would you put the betting money if the $20 betting fairy dropped it on your lap and said you can only bet it on one of these two women?
Yeah, I'd probably pass on that. I don't love the betting line in this scenario because I think it's a decent fight for Manon. I think I would lean, coin flip if you're giving me even odds, right? If it's not exactly what the betting line says now, then I'm leaning Blanchfield because I do ultimately think she's more well-rounded and I think she has more ways to win. And ultimately, I think as the fight goes on, she'll be able to find that way to the win. But I can definitely see a scenario where she struggles. I could definitely see this being potentially her toughest fight, even if she does win. So I like this fight. I really do like this fight stylistically. I think we're going to learn a lot about Erin Blanchfield, win or lose here. I don't think we're going to we're not going to learn much new about Manon Fiorot. Like I think we kind of know who she is at this point, and that's a very efficient, kind of mean striker. And I think she'll be able to execute that game plan decently against Blanchfield, but I do think ultimately if Blanchfield is able to execute at the highest possible level that she has in her arsenal, she will win. And I think she will rise to the occasion here. So I would pick Blanchfield, but I think there's a small part of me that thinks that it's dog or pass in this scenario, betting odds wise. And I think there's a path to victory for her. So yeah, close fight. I think Blanchfield will win, but I think we'll learn something, and I think it might be her toughest test in the UFC.
Can I push back on something real quick?
Oh, please. I would love this.
I'm just surprised to hear you say that you don't think there's a way we could learn more about Manon Fiorot, because if she comes in here and pulls off this upset, I feel like the narrative around Manon Fiorot changes entirely. Like that is a 180 degrees switch from, I think, how a lot of people view her right now as sort of like, oh, like she's pretty good, but she's not maybe at that elite level. If she comes in and like ends the Erin Blanchfield hype train and really becomes the first person to put a dent in this train that just feels like it's barreling towards a certain inevitable place, like I feel like we are talking about Manon in a completely different stratosphere coming Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at that point. Like that, it feels like she has so much to gain from this matchup.
The two things I'd say to that, to address that, certainly I think it would be a big profile kind of win, but the two things I'd say to that is, one, if that were to happen, I'd expect it to happen in a similar style to the way she wins all her fights. Like if she comes out here and flying triangles, Erin Blanchfield, or submits her in a grappling exchange, yeah, I've learned something new about her. If she comes out here and just outstrikes her to a decision, I could have seen that coming. Like I think that that's a viable path to victory for her. So I'm not going to be blown away by that from a stylistic perspective, or I couldn't have seen her do that. Certainly, I think there's a level of competition aspect that you pointed to. Like, yeah, she stopped the hype train, but a Rose Namajunas win means just as much to me. Like I get that Erin Blanchfield is the young up and coming prospect, like, but a win over Rose Namajunas is just as impressive to me. I count that as a big scalp. Rose? Yeah, I mean, we just talked about like if somebody from 125 goes up to 135 and is a name on that record, or vice versa, like that just means something to me. I don't think that her profile gets raised. What I imagine would happen from MMA fans, if I'm speaking honestly, is they'll just say Erin Blanchfield wasn't for real. That's what ultimately would happen if she wins this fight.
I mean,
that's just what will happen.
Yeah, sure.
That's
a ridiculous statement, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, that is exactly how this will go. It'll be like, well, she wasn't ever very good to begin with, and ultimately it didn't mean anything. So I'm kind of there's a truth to what you're saying. Certainly, like I think her first of all stringing those two wins back to back together over Rose and then Erin, I think would be significant. But again, I don't think anybody's going to be clamoring for her to get the title shot on the back of that. Like it's still going to be business as usual. Shevchenko and Grasso resolve their business. And then if she's around at that time, then she'll get the title shot. I don't think there's going to be a big new wave. And stylistically, if she is to do it, I don't expect it to be in a way that we did not see coming. I expect it will be exactly how I think she can win this fight, which is to be on the outside, use her distance and her range, and just outpoint her.
Yeah. I mean, look, if Fiorot, like if Blanchfield goes like 1 for 17 in takedown attempts, and like the one takedown, Fiorot gets right back up and just keeps lumping her up on the feet. Yeah, I will take a lot away from that. I'll take a lot away from that performance because that's a newer sort of layer of her game that hasn't really been tested. I know she's been more of an offensive grappler when she's needed it, but we haven't really seen her attacked from a defensive grappling position and from a defensive wrestling position. So if she get past the freaking Erin Blanchfield test, that would go a long way for me in how I view her. So I am with you, Shaheen, but I understand what you're saying, Rick. The pick is Blanchfield, and I'm kind of hoping we get a fight like that. I could see a world where Erin just tackles her, it just bruises her up, and then like round 2, it's just the same thing, and then she gets a finish. And while that would be super impressive, I kind of don't want to see that. I want to see a very competitive fight. I want to see one that goes into the championship rounds, because if I have questions, those are that's probably the biggest one I have in this fight. What happens if this hits round 4? What happens if this hits round 5? Which fighter is more ready for that? You would have to assume based on the youthfulness of Erin Blanchfield that she would be more ready. But what's Manon going to look like in round 4, especially if she wins 2 of the first 3 rounds? Can she keep that pace? Can she keep that going into the championship round? So I kind of want to see what this all looks like if it gets extended. And I sort of feel like it will. I'm going to say Erin Blanchfield by decision. I think this is going to be a closer fight than a lot of people think, but I think in the end, I think Blanchfield is just going to sort of outlast her, get her in some trouble. And I think after that final horn sounds, it's going to be no doubt that Erin Blanchfield won. And then we'll see where she goes. If she fights a Macy Barber or fights a Rose, regardless, I do expect her to fight again. Or if she goes to 135, we'll see what happens. But the pick is Erin Blanchfield, and may the best woman win. Should be fun. Let's go to the co-main event real quick, and then we'll talk about other storylines. I do want to hear from the peeps, because I'm sure the peeps are going to have some thoughts about this. Shaheen, we got Vicente Luque back inside the octagon, not facing Sean Brady. We all know why, but he's facing Joaquin Buckley now. I thought his media day scrum was very interesting. How, look, I was supposed to fight on this date. I'm a fighter. This is what we do. We fight. And if we have a date, doesn't matter who the opponent is, we get in there and we fight. Very high risk, low reward fight here for one Vicente Luque, taking on Joaquin Buckley, who has looked pretty good at 170. Your thoughts on the matchup? And just to sprinkle this in there, a lot of respect for Joaquin Buckley from a betting perspective. Vicente Luque only a minus 112 favorite. The comeback on Joaquin Buckley minus 108. Betting community viewing this as an absolute coin flip fight, Shaheen.
I love this fight. I love this fight so much. Like, if I had to pick one fight to watch this weekend, it's this fight. Vicente Luque has been my guy for a long time. Like, you know how we all kind of have those guys that we just sort of latch onto. For me, it's always like the ultra violent, quiet dudes who just maybe don't get recognition in a way that they should, but are just on a tear. And we saw it for so long in Vicente Luque's career, right? Like, he went 10-1 over the best stretch of his career. Dude was finishing everybody. He was putting up like prime Carlos Condit numbers in terms of these finishing stats. And yet he was never really getting a look. He was never really getting in that conversation. I wouldn't say he's getting the Tony Ferguson treatment, because I think Tony Ferguson was being elevated on a different way than Vicente was. And Tony Ferguson was certainly getting bigger fights. But Vicente was maybe like a lower tier version of that, where dude's just out here being pure violence and no one's really caring or paying attention because he was just not that great on the mic. And he just didn't feel like he was that interesting of a personality every time, he sort of got the opportunity to be. Which is a shame, because obviously we know like that's part and parcel with this game. But ultimately, like, I care more about the results in the cage. And this dude was just violence incarnate for so long. And then it felt like he sort of like the window ended, right? Like I was really sad when Vicente Luque lost those 2 in a row, and it felt like, okay, like, man, this dude was a lot of fun for a long time, and maybe he missed his window. Maybe he missed that opportunity to really become a main player here at welterweight, and now it's over. And you know how these things work. Like they just don't come back. One of those things. So I was really pleased when he's able to get back in the win column. That fight against Rafael dos Anjos, maybe he didn't get it finished. Maybe, it wasn't as decisive as people would have liked. But just for Vicente Luque to still be a player in this welterweight division and still be, someone that matters, that's very fun to me. I hope he's able to put together a second run. He's only 32 years old, so it feels like there's still opportunity for him there to do it. And then Joaquin Buckley, man, I mean, like, obviously Joaquin Buckley has had like such a weird road in the UFC, right? Like he comes into this promotion and has one of the greatest knockouts that any of us has ever seen against Impa. And then since then, the 2 divergent paths both those men have taken is such a weird road to look at in retrospect, where Impa kind of like wanders around in the darkness for so long and then all of a sudden becomes a millionaire in PFL. And then Joaquin Buckley's sort of been this guy who he wins some, he loses some, he wins some, he loses some, changes divisions, and it just never really feels like he was able to sort of find that rhythm, find that path that would really set him forward on contendership. But now, he moves back up to welterweight. He gets these two wins back to back. The Fiallo head kick in particular was incredibly brutal, right? I love this fight. This fight screams violence to me, and I feel like it's going to tell us something too, because I spoke about the Vicente losses, but he's still someone like if you beat Vicente Luque in this welterweight division, that means something to me, and I feel like it should mean something to a lot of people. Like this is not a washed up Vicente Luque. This is still a Vicente Luque who is capable in a lot of different ways and able to exact extreme violence. If Joaquin Buckley comes in here and beats Vicente Luque, like Joaquin Buckley is all of a sudden a player in this top 15 at welterweight. Like he is able to get bigger fights. He's able to get the type of fights that can push you into that next level of contention and start getting you in the mix, as we're talking about title shots and things like that. Still a ways away from it, but is a big, big step. And so I don't know, man. I love this fight to death. I think this is going to be incredibly exciting. It's going to be all action, and someone's probably going to sleep, and I can't wait to watch it.
Rick, anything you want to add?
No, I think you summed it up well. I also love this fight. I'm a big believer in welterweight Joaquin Buckley. Like he has impressed me, and I believe in his skills. And I think Vicente Luque is somebody who he's very hard to gauge where he's at. Like I think we're very quick as people get older in their career and start to lose fights to call them washed or to think the best years are behind. But when you look at the strength of competition, like it's just impossible. He's in fights against guys who are going to win fights against most people. And when you're in that scenario where you've got 2 fighters who are top of the class, elite athletes, sometimes some win and sometimes some lose, and it's hard to really read those trends too much. So I'm compelled by this fight. I think we'll get an insight into at least more of an insight into where Vicente Luque is right now. But I'm a believer in welterweight Joaquin Buckley. I think he's a really slick striker, and somebody who's an interesting wrinkle to this division. So I love this fight. I just love this fight.
Yeah, dude. Like, look at who Vicente Luque has lost since he officially was on the roster. Like, he did fight in the Ultimate Fighter finale, but I never really truly count those fights. Leon Edwards, I think that one aged pretty well. Stephen Thompson in 2019 in a fight where Luque had his moments, but Wonder Boy just did Wonder Boy things. Bilal Muhammad, who's about to probably fight for the belt, and then Jeff Neal, who, if Jeff Neal shows up and has a good night, he's a problem for absolutely anybody. And then he bounces back with like a calculated performance against Rafael dos Anjos. So we'll see how it all plays out here.
I think it's important to not just look at the losses, look at the wins too. Just look at the strength of competition. Look at the run. It's similar to RDA, which I thought was a nice little mirror fight between the two. Like when you're fighting that many high level mixed martial artists, when you're fighting at that stage, when you're fighting at that level in your career that you are just getting killers every single fight, sometimes you're going to drop them. And sometimes you can't look at that one result and be like, yeah, he's on the other side of it. Like, because then he bounces back and has a nice win against RDA. It's very tough when you're fighting that caliber of competition, because on any night, if those guys show up even a little bit better, then maybe it's their night. So yeah, much respect to Vicente Luque, who's had an incredible UFC career and just fought absolute killers from moment one. But yeah, I'm not ready to like stick a fork in Vicente Luque by any means. Anybody who like looked at the hiccup and was like, he's done, I think we need to slow the horses a little bit. The dude is still extremely dangerous and a really high level fighter.
Yeah, that's the thing is he's been doing this for a decade. Like we
Yeah.
always do the thing on Twitter where like you'll throw out like, look at all these dudes Dustin Poirier's fought, and it's like this big list of 20 guys, and it gets a lot of engagement, and everyone's so impressed. Like Vicente Luque is the welterweight version of that. Like you go up and down
An
the line,
RDA.
like, it
Those
is
two.
hitters after hitter after hitter after hitter. It's just ridiculous, and he's always just kind of been in the background because of the way that he doesn't engage people with the microphone skills and the interviews and stuff like that, because he's so deferentially is so respectful to the game and things like that. And it's unfortunate in that way. But dude, if you put together a highlight reel, Vicente Luque has one of the most fun highlight reels in this entire division.
Yes, he does. Yeah. And for a homework assignment for all the newer fans out there, if you really want to get a glimpse of the heart and soul of one Vicente Luque, go back to August 2019 and watch that fight with Mike Perry. Holy smokes. That is everything you would expect it to be. It is awesome. It's a good one. And Vicente Luque dogs it out. But Shaheen, does Vicente Luque get the job done against Joaquin Buckley tomorrow? Interesting matchup. Joaquin's got some momentum right now. Vicente Luque, you mentioned the experience and the resume. Does Luque get a run in him? Can he beat the upstart Joaquin Buckley, the welterweight upstart, that is?
Oh, man, this is tough. You're putting me on the spot in a way I didn't want to be for this one. I mean, as I said, Vicente Luque has been one of Shaun's guys for a long time. It's tough for me to pick against him. And I ultimately will pick Joaquin Buckley, but to me, that's more of me believing in welterweight Joaquin Buckley than me crapping on Vicente Luque. As Eric said, I'm a big believer in Joaquin Buckley at this division. Like, dude looked ridiculous at the weigh-ins today. Absolutely shredded. Like he feels like a real danger and someone who's going to matter in this division. I think Vicente Luque still has a lot left in him. Like I think there's still plenty of tread left on this tire, and he's going to continue to be a contender in this division and someone who's maybe not the Neil Magny, right? Like Neil Magny is sort of the lowest level gatekeeper to contendership that we have. I would say Vicente Luque is almost like the next level of that gatekeeper. I think he can continue to be in that spot, but I think this is one where we're about to start talking about Joaquin Buckley in a different way after this fight. So I'm picking Joaquin.
Rick?
Yeah, I lean Luque. If you're giving me a coin flip, I'm going to lean on the guy who's just been here for that long and has that many high-level fights and has proven it before. But I think you might even be in agreement, Mike, make it 3 for 3. Like Joaquin Buckley's a real dude. I think this is going to be a tough competitive fight, but I do lean ever so slightly for Luque just because of how many times he's been in spots like this and he seems to be successful. So yeah, if you're giving me Luque at a coin flip, I'm going to take it, but not like super confidently because I believe in Buckley as well.
The first 3 minutes of this fight are going to be super important because if Luque starts getting cooking and starts to gain some momentum, I'm super curious to see how Joaquin Buckley responds to that, because Nasruddin Imavov started getting real loose on him, and I know it was a different weight class, and Joaquin just couldn't get it together. You could tell he was a little frazzled in that fight, and somehow in the end he still thought he won, which I don't understand how that's a thing, but be that as it may, to me, experience matters, even when we're talking about different ages and different pieces of momentum. To me, this is a fight I think Vicente Luque should win. Would it surprise me if Joaquin got it done? No. The pick is Vicente Luque. I think Joaquin is durable enough where this fight goes to the cards, but to me, it's Luque. I think the fight IQ, the fact that he's fought the who's who in this division, and respect to Joaquin Buckley, he's fought some good dudes as well. I was super impressed by the Alex Morono performance, but I think Vicente Luque is just sort of a different level. And to me, the stakes are high in this fight because I think the winner of this fight, as long as they don't take just a ridiculous amount of damage, might be stamping a passport to the UK to fight Michael Venom Page. That's how I would do this, but we shall see. I think a fight with MVP might be on the line here. Give me Vicente Luque MVP. I'd watch the hell out of that, but Joaquin Buckley MVP would be fun too. So that's my pick. Vicente Luque, decision, fun fight of the night, bonuses galore. Let's go. All right. There are obviously other fights on this card, but we're like 50 minutes into this thing. So let's go to the peeps, because I'm sure you guys will have other questions about some of these other fights. So let's bring in the baddest stash at MMA, the newly promoted E. Casey Leiden. Congrats, my man. Look at
Hey.
that.
Got my Chad George blue belt. I'm very excited about it. I wasn't expecting it. Despite me never wearing a gi, he gave me the rare, just strictly no gi blue belt because he's a big gi guy. But I'm like, but the gi classes always conflict with my striking classes, so it's like I just don't have time, coach. But yeah, thank you much. Very proud of it. But to the questions.
Let me also say for the chat, you are not a blue belt. You are more than a blue belt. I have rolled with you. You demolished me. You are not, like I can roll with blue belts and be fine. You royally messed me up. You are better than a blue belt.
Well, that's why I said Chad George, my coach. He runs California Mixed Martial Arts. There's a very high standard of belt promotions there, and I had to work my butt off for a year and a half, almost 2 years, grinding, getting beat up by everyone. But I got it, and now I have pressure on me. Now I went from a really good white belt to a crappy blue belt. So here it goes. I'm excited.
You are a blue belt like Demetrius Johnson is a brown belt. Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, I did get accused of sandbagging a lot. People were like, "Oh, you're a sandbagger being a white belt." I was like, "Hey, I can't promote myself, guys." So, whatever.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Thank you much. Now let's talk about these professional fighters. All right, guys. Let's go to super chats first.
Indeed. Jameek, low-key banger. Also, the one card was fired. Did you see? I didn't know there was a one card today. So, no, I did not see it. Goes to show you, be better at promoting, and maybe even the media members will know you're having a card, but that's beside the point. Shaun, what is the low-key banger of UFC Atlantic City?
Is it fair to say a Nate Landwehr fight is a low-key banger?
No,
because I feel like it's not getting any conversation at all, but like Nate Landwehr is on this card. Like that is instantly the pick for me.
If Nate Landwehr was ever low key, it'd be national news. There's just no way.
He's on the undercard.
The man is a walking statement. For me, so I'm gonna go Chidi and Jukwani and Reese McKee. I feel like that one's gonna be pretty violent. There's gonna be some kind of finish there. So that's probably mine.
Shout out to Chidi and Jukwani, by the way. Making 170, obviously the tales of him making 170 in the past changed his voice.
That's why his voice,
during one of those crazy weight cuts. But dude made it today and looked damn good doing it. So good on him. There are a lot.
I would say for the better
whether or not he can make it.
I would say that voice is kind of cool and magical. So maybe it worked out in his favor. It's a pretty great voice.
It is magical, definitely. I mean, this shouldn't constitute a low-key banger. But considering where it's placed on the card and considering like the talking points of everybody who has discussed this card, Verna versus Luque has got to be the correct answer. I mean, it's just buried there and no one's talking about it. And then the amount of people who look up and down the card, they're like, oh shit, this fight's happening on the card has been eye-opening. And we were talking about this on BTL yesterday, considering where strawweight is at right now. And who's there? What's going on with Tatiana Suarez? The stakes could be incredibly high for that fight too.
Here's my one fear with that fight. It could just be a sloppy kickboxing fight. Like there's a real chance that the grappling kind of neutralizes and we're just looking at like a sloppy kickboxing fight. So that's where I have some reservation in being like, yeah, it's going to be a banger, because there's a real world where like the grappling kind of just doesn't mix and all of a sudden it's on the feet for way too long and doesn't look great. But if they get into some exchanges, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm kind of excited about that one, but I do think it has potential to go the other direction as well.
Oh, without a doubt, that is my favorite fight on the card, Luque versus Verna. That is the banger, not low key banger. That is the banger on the card for me. So I'm very, very excited about that fight. And sloppy kickboxing, I don't care. I just want to see him fight.
Oh, dude, it's gonna be, even if it's sloppy kickboxing, it's gonna be fun as hell. Sloppy kickboxing.
Heck yeah.
I also think if we're gonna go a little deeper, Dennis Machuca, Connor Matthews is gonna be freaking fun. Those two are gonna beat the brakes off each other. Little New York versus Massachusetts battle, which I'm very much looking forward to.
All right.
Thank you, Jameek.
much.
Thank you, Gustavo. Is this the last time we see the Pleasure Man? Yes, maybe this is the low-key banger. Anton Turkalj. Just
Where is he on the
keeping his job. Keeping his job. Getting out
Against
there.
all odds.
Get or get got guy. He's been mostly getting got, and he is now going to take on Ibo Azayan on this prelim. So, Shaheen, talking stakes here, is the Pleasure Man fighting for his job tomorrow.
3 fights.
I thought he was last time out, and now he's still here. So, yes, the answer is still yes for me. I mean, that'd be 4 in a row, and none of them have really been that competitive. So, yes.
Couldn't tell you the first thing about his opponent, so no idea what the outcome of this is going to be. But yeah, I mean, staring down the barrel of 4 in a row, not a good spot for the Pleasure Man. Good gimmick, needs to up the fight game a little bit. Needs to get a dub here.
Yeah, I would say that gimmick is he's still in the UFC because of the gimmick. So, good job. All right.
It might be on the Mount Rushmore. It might be on the Mount Rushmore of like gimmicks that I really wish you were a better fighter, because I would love for this to be like a gimmick in my life for the next 10 years. Like I want you to succeed, Pleasure Man, but it's not working.
I felt that way about Dave Pee Wee Herman. That was great, and then it just
Same.
didn't go.
There
so
you go.
hot.
Great pull.
Great one. By the way, important to note for the bettors out there, Ibo Azayan, -125 favorite to come back on the Pleasure Man, +105. This is a rematch, by the way.
Oh, wow.
These guys fought before in 2020, won by the Pleasure Man via rear naked choke in August of 2020 in Brave CF. It was the last time, the only time that Mr. Azayan lost a fight was to the Pleasure Man. So the highly anticipated rematch, nearly 4 years in the making, happening on the big stage.
You can tell they're trying to book a win
for
for the Pleasure Man, trying to keep him around. I get it. Smart. I like this.
All right.
That's just good matchmaking, frankly.
Yeah.
Great matchmaking. Michael, I feel Manon has more to lose than Erin. Agree?
I think we all kind of touched on this. Yeah, more. But I will say, I don't think this is must win. I don't think it's like do or die. As we kind of like arrived at, we kind of like took some routes to it. There's options at 135 potentially. I don't think it's too deep back at 125. Depending, as soon as this gets resolved, I think a title shot at 125 is very grabbable. Because the top contenders can knock each other off. So yeah, I don't think it's like must win, but I certainly agree that Erin's got so much time in this game. Potentially, right? We don't want to put like, hey, Erin's going to be in this game for 10 years and she's gone in 3. We don't know ultimately how that's going to go, but she's so young and so hungry that like we really expect that she'll be around for quite a bit.
Yeah, just inherently, like there's a level of urgency around Manon that doesn't exist for a 24-year-old, but as we said, there are creative approaches to sort of massage the situation if you end up losing this one.
Yeah.
For sure. Lexi, thank you. The MMA Fighting Crew gives me a reason to exist in this unjust world. The golfing with Perry was 10 out of 10. Thank you. Go check that out if you haven't. I know some people, you get a little thrown off by golf and you think you're going to get a 90-minute video. It's a nice, tight 18 and change, guys, and it's a good time. So go check that out. Feedback has been tremendous. Thank you, Lexi.
For those uninitiated, it's a new venture called Swing Rounds on the MMA Fighting YouTube channel, edited by Casey, featuring Mike Heck and Mike Perry. It's quite good. Go enjoy it. I think and Alexi, I mean, what a shout out here. What a put over here. Incredible.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe that we have that kind of impact in your life, but thank you for hanging with us, and thank you for watching the products that we produce.
All right. And,
we love you very much.
Yeah, we love you. And you know what we also love? Achilles Jr.
Yes.
Oh, let's see. Cheaty at 170, good or bad thing? Ruzi versus Dumas, fun at all, or boring as hell like New York Rick in all caps? Rick, I hope you step on several Legos.
You know what?
That is such
I
a
will
terrible thing to tell a father. I'm just
Wow.
that's such a
I will
horrible
not
thing to
stand
wish
for
on.
this. I will not stand for this. You are an absolute bully. To tell me to step on Legos, you've crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, and we are mortal enemies now. And in the spirit of that, I'd like you to know what I said that was so boring. I'd like you to super chat in and let me know exactly what I said that was so boring, because I don't agree with you, and I hope you step on Legos. And you should tell me what I did to be boring so that we can correct it moving forward.
Dude, I
Shots
stepped
fired.
on like a large, like the large Legos. Like we can't give our Tyler the small Legos yet, but the large Legos. I stepped on a large Lego contraption yesterday, and it ruined my entire night. Just ruined my entire night.
I know it's kind of cliche and the joke, and it's like but like it's not. It hurts. It's legit. It's legit. I know that that's become kind of like a cliche, kind of trite joke thing. Chidi Njokuani at 170. I mean, if he can make the weight like he showed he can, I love that. Like that dude's great.
There's no answer to this yet. We just don't know the answer, because making the weight is only half the battle. Now you have to fight at that weight. And just because you're on the scale, you look good, does not mean you're going to look good tomorrow night. So
we talked about that with Manon earlier, right? Like sometimes you can look bad on the scale and have a great performance. Sometimes you can look great on the scale and it just took too much out of you. Like there's really no way to tell you're right until tomorrow. That's when we'll really know.
Yeah.
If he's himself, then like hell yeah, love this. There's a lot of good matchups that I think will be a lot of fun.
And he's got some good wins on his resume at 172. Like at the time,
but
Fialho in 2017, Max Griffin early on in his career, Gilbert Smith, which in 2017 was like a really good win. He's got good wins at 170. Even the legend himself, Melvin Gillard, on that list in a Bellator fight. But this is a catchweight fight at 180, but still, he was considered a welterweight back then. So, Alan Jouban. He's got a stoppage win over Alan Jouban super early in his career. I always forget how long Chidi has been fighting for. He's been fighting for a long ass time, since 2007.
Yeah.
All right.
I got to say, I feel like we've ratcheted up this rivalry now, this New York Rick Achilles rivalry. And I see Jameek Vassell out here in the comments calling for Achilles Jr. versus New York Rick at UFC 300. And frankly, I'm here for it. This feels like we need resolution now. You can't just go ahead and tell someone to step on.
Is that the big surprise Dana got? Is that the big surprise from Dana? The big surprise from Dana?
That's the rabbit in the hat. The rabbit in the hat is Achilles Jr. He doesn't want it. He just wants to sit behind his little keyboard and type it. He doesn't want this smoke. He just wants to do a lot of this, talking about that. I dare you. But why am I boring? Tell me. I'd be curious to know. Super chat in. Let me know.
I love it. This is the best gimmick in all of MMA right here.
Gimmick. This is real.
This is real. This is as real as it gets. Like heck.
But I mean, I thought like cooler heads were prevailing. Like each and every show is like Rick's a 1 out of 10. His takes are 3 out of 10. Then we got to like a 6 or 7, and then finally he was like, "All right, Rick, I agree with your takes." And now we've slid all the way back. I wonder what happened since.
That's what I'm saying. I want to know.
He was setting up the swerve. Yeah. He was setting up the swerve.
I need to know.
Gotta keep you on your toes.
We need a super chat to get to the bottom of this.
All right, I'm gonna jump off some super chats and go to some other questions real quick from our good friend Joseph Boza.
Should Verna versus Luque be on the main card? Joseph loves this fight. Verna is 1 3 of 4. Luque is 1 8 of 9. And given the stats, Tatiana Suarez unknown as a title shot on the line. We talked about this on BTL yesterday, but I think that should clearly be on the main card. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I don't.
Frankly,
understand.
I think there's no one I'd rather listen to more talk about card placement than New York Rick. So please go ahead, New York Rick.
Oh yes, great point.
I say nothing.
It should be. I mean, obviously it should
nothing.
be, but also it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. None of this matters.
Card placement matters. Card placement matters. All right, but we're moving
Although,
on.
actually, you know what? I take that back, because this isn't like a normal Apex card where like all of it's the same. Like there is a difference in this one where one's going to be on ESPN2 and one's going to be on main ESPN. Virna Luque deserves to be on ESPN. Like that deserves to be in front of the most eyes, because you want people to know who these individuals are. So I agree with you, Joseph.
Okay. Thank you much. I don't know what this is about, but can you? Maybe someone else knows.
Can we talk about Mick Maynard lighting up fans on Twitter about complaining about the Apex? They want to be a top 4 major sport. Last I checked, NFL games weren't played at practice facilities. I remember Mick did this a while back.
Yeah, is
I
this
think
a
that's
news
what
thing?
he's referring to. I don't think
Oh, okay,
I don't
so
think it has
back,
happened
okay.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm off the Twitter, so I wasn't. up to
He
date
had
on
a
it.
he had a tweet. It might have actually even been Twitter at the time. Surprisingly, it might be
Okay.
that old. That he said something to the effect of like, "Who are the people that are complaining about all these cards? Like they ultimately end up as great cards." Something to that effect. Like, "Show me a bad card," was basically what he was saying. He's like, "Show me a bad card." But I don't think he's like in the flies like lighting people up right now, unless I'm mistaken.
There's like
I can look
there's
at
like one day.
Okay.
He
He
tweeted
probably
out
got-
randomly, bet your bloody elbow complained about the UFC card this weekend. That was in May of 2023. And then that led to like a bunch of people responding. And he was like, I have no idea why I'm doing this, but which card did you actually think was bad? These athletes have been amazing. And then he got like 122 comments on that afterwards. And he was just
All right.
going
I
back
also
and forth. So,
I think, Matt, we're combining two things here, right? Like, he's talking about a card, right? He's not necessarily talking about hosting fights in the Apex, right? He's not saying these cards would be better at the Apex or they wouldn't be better on the road. Like, those are two separate things, in my opinion. There's a lot of people who, like, very vocally, Ariel Helwani has said, Apex steals my soul. I don't want to see any more Apex. Down with the Apex, which I think is a point that many people feel and can agree with. I personally don't have as strong a feeling toward it, but I know a lot of people do. Then there's the separate point that I feel much more strongly about, which is that the product is watered down. The roster is too big. There's too many fight cards, and the fight cards, whether they're at the Apex, my backyard, in Atlantic City, they're not a high quality product anymore. That we are getting every Saturday night that happen to be at the Apex are just not good cards. And so that is the two things.
okay. So he is on a reply tour.
Oh,
the
Oh,
last
okay.
month.
Shout out to Matt for spotting it. What is he saying?
Is he though? Because I was
hold
looking
on.
at this too. It seems like it's all in one conversation with McMalley, right? Is that the one we're talking about?
Oh no, it keeps going. If you scroll down, there's a whole bunch. I have nothing. March 16th. I have nothing to complain about. F it. Let's complain about the venue that I'm not at. Was the start of it, and then he said I was bored, just wanted to F with you. And there's a whole bunch of different things. Clapping back at people who don't like Bo Nickel, Cody Brundage being on the main card.
Yeah. See,
There you go. I
There's
mean, it's
too-
nothing
there's
like
too much-
crazy.
there's too much in the stew here. There's too much going on, but ultimately the UFC is stoking the flames of this, right? They are reaping what they sow in this regard. They continue to host fights at the Apex. The cards are not of super high caliber these days, and so yeah, I don't blame fans that get upset about it. But again, and I say this every time that we arrive at this kind of conversation, you have a vote. You are determining where these fights take place. If you do not watch those Apex cards, I promise you they'll be out of the Apex. If you continue to watch those Apex cards, then I promise you they'll stay at the Apex because it's a real good money saver for them. So act accordingly, fans. If you can't stand the Apex, then don't watch, because what you're doing now is supporting it and showing them that you will tune in. So vote.
Shaheen's face.
There's only one.
We're just
There's
a
only
bunch
one
of degenerates. We're all
Yeah.
a bunch of degenerates. We're screaming into the wind. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right?
There's only one thing I like about the Apex, and that's the small cage. That's the only thing I like about it. Outside of
Yeah.
that,
Agreed on that.
yeah. Thank you, Matt Maggio. Got a couple of new super chats just flew in. This one's a little off topic, but I think they want to hear your opinions on this.
Hingle McCrinkle.
Love that name.
Can we just hear your opinions on McGregor's performance in Roadhouse? I'm honestly not sure how I feel about any part of this movie. So Casey, good plug here. You could check out This Is Cinema. First episode was about this movie. I gave my thoughts last week. It's just an awful film, but McGregor is just kind of fun in it. Jet hated McGregor in it, but you can find out why if you go watch or listen to This Is Cinema. But New York Rick, your thoughts on Roadhouse and McGregor's performance, and then Shaheen, I'm very interested to hear yours as well. But Rick, kick us off.
Yeah, I found it quite enjoyable. Like, I didn't come in with high expectations. I watch a lot of like B action movies, straight to VOD, DVD type stuff, and so I don't have exactly the most refined palate. I can find lowbrow stuff quite enjoyable. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was quite good. I thought the cinematography was quite good. I enjoyed Conor McGregor immensely. I thought that was the exact casting and role you should have for Conor McGregor, and I don't like his long-term prospects as a Hollywood actor. I don't think there's any Oscars in his future, but I thought that was a perfect execution and utilization of him. I had some questions about the story. Didn't think the love interest part was compelling. I thought he had more chemistry with the bar owner than he did with the random doctor. But I'm not exactly grading this on a very harsh scale. So I found it an enjoyable, tight, hour and a half watch. And I thought Conor was quite good. I enjoyed Conor in that specific role. I also liked specifically about Conor's performance how it didn't seem like there was any continuity with the character. Like his walk was one way in the first scene, then his walk was a completely different way, then his walk was a completely different way. It just felt like whatever vibe he was on set that day was how he acted, and I love that. It felt very unhinged, and I quite enjoyed it. So I dug it. I thought it was great. I'm never gonna think about it again. But I enjoyed my time with it.
Wait, real quick, if you would have paid whatever $15 to go watch it in a movie theater like the director wanted, would you feel different rather than just sitting at home and watching it for free?
I'm a big go to the movies guy, so I've paid
me
for
too.
Significantly worse
Oh,
than
okay.
this. Like
Okay.
I
You
watched
pay for
Madam
bad
Web.
movies. Oh, okay.
I watched
God.
Madam Web in a theater, so like I've seen much worse. I've seen much worse.
All right.
Gene, have you watched this movie?
So my journey with this has been interesting because like initially I was like pretty morbidly curious. I think like a lot of us of like, oh, this seems like a bit of a disaster. I'm interested to watch it. And then everyone's reviews sort of started rolling in around me and I became less curious about it. And then I listened to Cinema Mama and it made me never want to watch the movie, if I'm being honest. So now I feel like I'm just never going to watch this movie and I'm pretty okay with that. Like I feel pretty good about that. Hearing everyone else's opinions have made me sort of form my own opinion without seeing it. And frankly, I've been on like a crazy binge of Shogun lately. I had to catch up to that. And Shogun has been awesome. Like that A++, like that is some tier 1 television. And also I had been slacking behind on seeing Dune. So I watched Dune 1 and 2 back to back and went to see Dune 2 in theaters. And now I've been on a crazy Dune rabbit hole too, because I've never really like ventured into Dune or any of Frank Herbert's stuff. So like, I've been completely consumed with Shogun and Dune, if I'm being honest, and I'm pretty happy about my decisions in life right now.
Can I just say something respectfully? Can I just retort to that respectfully? You're contrasting those items, but what I would argue is those are complementary pieces, right? Like Dune 2 is UFC 299, UFC 300. Like this is the best we get. This is the apex. But you can also watch Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson as well. I don't know all your feelings on that fight personally, but compare that to whatever trash version of MMA or boxing or whatever that you would still willingly consume, but know it is not a competitive product and rather a complementary product. I say enjoy both. I recommend you watch Roadhouse. I think it can be enjoyable for an hour and a half.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Although I will counter that by saying
2 hours.
I have fulfilled my terrible film experience with the 1984 Dune, which is one of the most batshit insane movies I've ever watched in my entire life. So I'd never seen that either, and I just got really curious. And like, I don't know what young ass Patrick Stewart is doing in that movie. Like, he doesn't belong in that movie, but that movie is insane on a lot of levels. So like, I'm getting my fill of terrible product as well. So I feel like
your bad movie cup is full. I understand. I completely understand. I get it.
Man, Eric, I'm really happy you mentioned the love interest because that's what I thought too. If Jake Gyllenhaal would have all of a sudden the bartender, because that was the chick in the movie, not the doctor. The doctor was such a bad character.
I was thinking the bar owner, but the bartender could also work.
No, not the bar owner. The bartender. The bartender had
food. Yeah, that was pretty.
That would have been a twist.
Right.
That would have been a twist. I would have loved it. No, I was talking the bartender. Okay.
Yeah,
but watch This Is Cinema on MMA Findings Podcast Network or on our YouTube channel. We have a new one coming out soon, but I'll wait to hype that one up later. We got one more super chat from Chase.
Chase, hilarious scenario. John fights Stipe, loses. UFC books the rematch, and Tom is stuck doing nothing. Also hope to meet Rick and GC and AC tomorrow. I mean, I don't know what's hilarious about this. This seems very real. Like, this could absolutely happen.
No.
Stipe.
No, this
if
is hilarious.
Stipe beat
This
John,
would be hilarious. This would be so hilarious.
But it could absolutely happen. Like, if Stipe beats John, they're going to try to do a rematch.
I don't think so.
But it would be hilarious if John dug in his heels for this long to like get this fight that no one really wants or cares about, and then he loses it anyway, and then he loses all of the GOAT era aura anyway just because of getting this bad fight. Like, that would be objectively funny to me.
I think it would be a lot more likely the UFC would completely throw John under the bus, move on, and have Stipe fight Tom than John angling for a rematch. I think this is under the best of circumstances. This is them just trying to squeeze the last juice out of both John and Stipe that they can, and I don't think that they would further double down on it and invest and say like, yeah, now we have to run this one back. I think they'd be glad to move on from it. I think this is the last hurrah. So if John wins, I think, obviously the ceiling comes off, right? There's a lot more potential. A John versus Tom fight, I think, could potentially be massive, especially if Tom's able to pick up a win this summer over like a Cyril Gahn, Curtis Blades type name. That would be big. But I don't think there's a world where they just tie it up with this one again. This feels like we tried it, we're going to book it, it's going to run, and then we're going to move on. So I don't think so. Also, I think it's important to note the UFC probably wants this fight more than anybody. Like, it's not just like a John Jones quote. I know popular at the site via Jed Meshew. John Jones is quote unquote ducking Tom Aspinall, but the UFC is the one pushing forth this fight more than anybody. So it'll happen. John will destroy Stipe, then he'll eventually fight Tom, and we'll move on. It'll be great.
Real quick, if once John and Stipe ever happens, no wait,
You're not even sure. You're not even sure it's gonna happen.
It's like my Connor versus Chandler. It's this thing we just talk about. Does Aspinall get stripped of his interim belt?
No, I think they'll.
But why does he have an interim belt? But why does he have an interim belt if the heavyweight title was defended?
He has an interim belt so that when John and Stipe inevitably retire after this fight, after this very dumb fight, they can just say, okay, Tom, you're the champion. Same way that Robert Whittaker had the interim belt when Michael Bisping and GSP were doing their thing. And then they're like, oh, okay, we already got the guy. Robert Whittaker, you're the guy.
Is that what happened? Yeah. When GSP won the belt? Mm-hmm. Wait, so... All right.
Yeah, because then it was... Because that was the whole setup. That was the whole setup. GSP was like, I want to do this. And if I do this, I promise you I will fight Robert Whittaker and unify the titles. And then he was just like, oh, no, actually, I was just kidding. I don't actually want to do that.
Did he actually say that? Did GSP say that I will defend my belt once I win? Or is that...
Well, that was his promise to the UFC ostensibly. That is what we've been told by sort of Dana and the UFC.
That's coming from Dana.
He was going to do this.
That's only coming from Dana,
That's the story that's been told about that, yeah.
From Dana and the UFC. Correct? Not GSP.
Look, that was like 5 years ago. I don't know.
I don't know.
But yes.
Just the thought of Stipe. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
We should just note that most of the time interim titles are kind of meaningless. They're kind of silly, just like little trinkets to just allow them to crown a champion to sell pay-per-views and have a champion on a poster without there being a need for it. This is actually the one scenario where an interim title actually makes sense. The champion is injured. The champion cannot fight. They are establishing an interim champion in the heavyweight division. He will defend that title this summer in Manchester, or where is it? Manchester? I forget where the UK card is. He'll defend that somewhere in the UK, and then they'll unify the belt at some point. So, or if not unifying, John or Stipe or whoever wins will move on, and then he will become champion. So yeah, this is actually exactly how it's intended to play out. Often it's the opposite. Often it's nobody's injured and they're just deciding, hey, somebody's going to be a champion in a division that's not necessary. This one makes sense. John is hurt. John's not fighting.
I feel like this is very WWE where John's belt is the Raw championship, and Aspinall is the SmackDown champion. You know, so they're two equal champions or something dumb. But all right, sorry. Atlantic City. That was fun to talk about. That's it.
That was our last super chat, huh?
That was the last super chat. Yeah.
Achilles Jr. didn't want to say anything. He wouldn't.
No,
that
he
coward.
He's scared.
Coward. Absolute coward. Another dub for me. What do I need to say?
Hit the music, Casey. We have done our job here today. We will talk more about this card tomorrow, 6:30-ish Eastern time. We did have one hiccup on the scale. Julio Arce, who has fought at bantamweight a whole bunch, misses at featherweight by a pound, re-weighs an hour later, and gains another quarter of a pound. Gotta love it. Very weird situation. You can check out videos on Twitter, but that fight will move forward with 20% going to the opponent. But more on this tomorrow. New York Rick, have a great time in AC. Same to GC as well. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk all about it before and after. So for New York Rick, Casey, Shaun Al-Shatti, I am Mike Heck. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow, everybody.
I can't make it do that. You're so cool.